To me, the great hope is that now these little 8mm video recorders and stuff are coming around. Some just people who normally wouldn't make movies are going to be making them. And, you know, suddenly one day some little fat girl in Ohio is going to be the new Mozart, you know, and make a beautiful film with her little father's camera recorder. And for once, the so-called professionalism about movies will be destroyed forever, you know, and it'll really become an art form. That's my opinion.
So you want to be a filmmaker. Do you have what it takes? Determination, strength, and the flexibility to adapt to all weather and all scenarios and crappy actors and people's attitudes. Oh yeah, and by the way, tell a great story. Apocalypse Now is considered one of the greatest feats in American cinema. Francis Ford Coppola funded the film by himself, and there's been several cuts over the years, and we got a final cut on 4K UHD a couple years ago that looks phenomenal. There was a documentary shot by Coppola's wife, Eleanor Coppola, behind the scenes look like no other into the mind of Coppola and the madness of Apocalypse Now. Heart of Darkness, a filmmaker's apocalypse. Talk about a time in filmmaking history in the 70s. No green screen used here. Everything practical, on set, on location. And Coppola is in the trenches too. I mean, this is an amazing behind the scenes look. Orson Welles was rumored to take on the Heart of Darkness story. George Lucas at one time was attached to direct. Nobody could quite crack the code. And so you have Lucas in the documentary. You have Coppola's comments. You have John Milius, who co-wrote the script for Apocalypse Now, saying that he wanted the challenge of writing and breaking the story of Heart of Darkness, and Coppola's determination and his struggle with Marlon Brando, who was paying $1 million a week, and they would just sit there and Brando would go over his character and sort of feel like he was making things up just to prolong the time. And 238 production days. Apocalypse Now was finally completed. 238 days in production. I can't even imagine. Let alone having your wife film a documentary about you and having your 3 kids there on set location. You'd go crazy. Hence, a filmmaker's apocalypse. Also, another thing that that Heart of Darkness documentary goes into is Martin Sheen. Martin Sheen replaced Harvey Keitel like the first day of production. They fired Harvey Keitel and replaced him with Martin Sheen. And he claims not being in great shape. He was coming in at 36, a chain smoker, and he had a heart attack in the middle of production. And several of the scenes were filmed with him being drunk or intoxicated. A lot of the cast members were, popping acid, and Dennis Hopper was Dennis Hoppering the set at times.
What are they going to say about him? What are they going to say? He was a kind man. He was a wise man. He had plans. He had wisdom.
So all this chaos, Coppola had to really undertake. Really a miracle that Apocalypse Now even got finished. It was even completed and was nominated for a bunch of Oscars and made a bunch of money and still makes money today. Now Francis Ford Coppola is sort of doing the same thing now. Cannes Film Festival in France is going to premiere Coppola's latest epic, Megalopolis. He screened it for some studio heads earlier in March, and it was kind of divisive, and nobody picked it up. Nobody wanted to distribute the film. He says it's the same reaction that people gave Apocalypse Now, when it came out over 50 years ago. So we'll see what happens with Megalopolis. I am eagerly, that's my most anticipated film of this year, Megalopolis. So I cannot wait to see what comes of that at Cannes Film Festival. If you're wanting to go to film school, if you want to be a filmmaker, Heart of Darkness is required viewing. I mean, I can't stress that enough. I wish I had seen it in film school. I didn't until recently. And that's because Eleanor passed away last week, and I decided to finally watch it. Please do yourself a favor and watch the film. You're having a more appreciation for Apocalypse Now than ever before. It's just, or filmmakers in general, you have an idea. It's not just, you're not just turning on a movie and it magically appears. This is gritty filmmaking. And oh, by the way, shot on actual film too, in the jungle. It's just insane. But let me know your thoughts on Heart of Darkness And I wanted to give my quick review of this film as just, one of the greatest documentaries of filmmaking ever made. And as always, this has been Return to the Disc. I'm Dan.